Welcome to Talk with Kristen with an E, the podcast that's like therapy, but cheaper and way more fun. I'm Kristen, host, storyteller, and occasional overthinker. From making friends to surviving burnout, reminiscing on our younger days, and learning how to adult, we'll chat about all life's lessons and laugh in between. So grab your drink, get comfy, and let's talk it out. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are continuing this friendship series and we're going to be talking about making friends as an adult, which sounds like it should be easier, but is it really? So today joining me, I have Kelly. Hey Kelly.
Hey, Kristen. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I'm excited to have you here. And I am super excited to talk about this because I have found making friends as an adult harder than I thought it would be. How about you?
Yeah, I think so. When you're younger, before the social media age, you don't care so much about what people think of you. It kind of is what it is. I think it's easier to put yourself out there and make friends when you're younger than it is when you're older. You have all of these things and life and baggage that you carry into friendships. Adult friendships are definitely more challenging to find.
Yeah. I mean, even in just what you just said, I feel like there's so many directions we could go with that because the social media thing, I definitely want to talk about social media and the role that it has in friendship because while there's positives, in some aspects, I see more negatives to it. But I feel like there's a lot to unpack there, so we can hold on that for a minute. But the other part about making friends and the baggage you bring into it, can we talk about that for a little bit too?
Yeah, yeah, it can be a lot.
So this is something my husband and I were just having this conversation because I was talking to him about how we're talking about friendship on the podcast, having one best friend and all this stuff. He told me it's kind of like when we were growing up and we taught that whoever you're going to marry, there's one perfect person for you. He said, I think somewhere along the way, we may have thought that about friends too, that there's this one perfect friend and we're always trying to find that one friend. He's like, you're basically looking for a friend that is you. And I'm like, yeah, like somebody who likes the stuff that I like. He's like, no, you are looking for a friend that is you. You want somebody who wants the same things you want, does the same things you do, is just like you. And when they do something that's not what you would have done, then you get upset about it because they're not meeting your expectations, or you want them to do a certain thing. And when they don't react the way he's like, you go in to friendships a lot, like with all this stuff in your head. Do you think sometimes there's struggles with adult friendships because of expectations you have or because you're looking for something specific?
I think there have been times and seasons where that was definitely more true than others. I don't know if it's just from all the different people that I've encountered. I've kind of had to reframe that
Mm-hmm.
mindset and realize in a marriage,
Yeah.
communication is so important. I think that's true too when you're trying to build a really solid friendship. You have to communicate because, like you said, your friends aren't going to always meet your expectations. There's going to be
Mm-hmm.
things that they do or don't do that you think, well, I would have done this and they didn't. And so it's hard to not get upset sometimes. But that's when communication is so important and just being able to talk through some of those things. And sometimes it's little things and it's not worth bringing up. We
Right.
have to realize that we can't hold everyone to our own standards. But when it is a friendship that you feel is valuable and important to you, I think we do have to have that communication aspect to talk through some of those things. None of us are perfect and we do things that upset each other. And so I think being able to talk through that even with friends is really important.
Right. So before we can get to that point, we've got to make friends. So how do you find, you've moved around a little bit. What are some ways that you have tried that's worked, maybe some ways that haven't worked when you're looking to find and establish friendships?
Yeah, so we've definitely moved around 4 states in 10 years of marriage, and we're not even military. I think back to when we were living in Ohio, and outside of work, I had a really hard time meeting people there. It was an odd time and an odd community, but that being said, for those who do work in corporate job, that honestly sometimes can be a great place to make friends.
Mm.
I've definitely had jobs where no, thank you, I don't want to take that. I will talk to you all day in the cubicle, but let's leave it there.
Right.
But thinking back to the job that I had there, I actually made some really great friends. And to this day, I still talk to one of them.
Oh,
Not
wow.
all the time, but we
Mhm.
still check in with each other. And I just loved her to death. And so, if you're struggling to find friends and you do work a job, that is an option sometimes. But yeah, I would say when we did our last move to Maine, I don't know what it was, but I was in my 30s at that point, and I think just really craving community. My best friend lives very far away from me. Even before we moved, she lived in another state. Other than family being nearby, we just didn't have community. And I just kind of had gotten to a point where I was like, it's fine. I don't like people. I'm
Yes.
antisocial. Oh,
Mm.
we had just gone through COVID a few years ago, and that made things weird with people. So I just settled at that point and was like, it's fine that I don't have friends to do anything with. When we moved, it was like a switch flipped in me, and I was like, I really want community, not only for myself, but just for my family as a whole and for my son to grow up. I remember growing up, my family had a handful of other families that we were just so close with that
Mm.
honestly were more like family to us than some of our own family was. And to this day, some of those people are still very much a part of my life. And so I love the idea of just building community for myself and for my family. When we moved here, that's what I started trying to do. It's hard. You have to be intentional about it. Like friends,
Mhm.
most of the time, don't just fall into your lap.
Right.
And so there's multiple ways that I've gone about that, which we can get into. But what about you? Because you've done some out of state moves as well.
Yeah, I've done multiple out of state moves, and it's kind of like being the new girl in school every time it happens, and you're trying to figure out is my
Mhm.
place here? Where do I find my people? How do I do it? Like you said, work is always a thing. When we first moved here, what I found about St. Louis community is there are people here who have lived here their whole lives. So many people are still friends with who they went to high school with, who they went to college with, and I had a really hard time breaking in. I had a girl I met at work. We were in a class together and she invited me to her book club, which was great. I love reading. We had a monthly book club that we get together. There were some other things we would do together and I loved it. I had so much fun. But at the same time, it was like I was with her and her friends. Like I never really felt that
Right.
I was one of them because a bunch of them had gone to college together. They'd known each other for years. So they were very into including me and I felt like I was a part of it. But at the same time, I wasn't really, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
that's one example. I used Facebook and Meetup a lot of times to make friends. Meetup was back when I was in Virginia. So this was probably still '07, '08 when social media was there, but it wasn't what it is now. And Meetup, you could join different groups and finding people to become friends with has never been a huge challenge. I've always been able to find places. And then as my son's been in different playgroups when he was little and now at school, I meet people that way. But what I'm finding is there's a difference between knowing people, having acquaintances or social media connections, and actually having friends with real human connection. And that's where I struggle when it comes to adult friendships. A question I wanted to ask you is, you can be in a group of people, you can find places, but how do you actually start those to be a friend? It's hard because I feel like you can't just go up to somebody and be like, "Hi, I'm Kristen. Do you want to be my friend?" That feels so silly. But when you look at friendships from when we were children to friendships when we were adults, that's how we did it as kids. I remember fifth grade and we had open house You'd go and meet the teachers, see your classroom. I had known there was going to be a new girl in our class. We were in the classroom looking around. I saw this girl and I walked up to her and I was like, "Hi, are you the Kara girl that's supposed to be here?" And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Hi, I'm Kristen." It was so easy then and it wasn't a big deal. I'm not saying I was braver, but it was socially acceptable that you could just go to somebody, or in a playground, you would, go over to say, "Hi, I'm Kristen. You want to be my friend?" But as an adult, I feel like that's so silly. I think in my
Yeah.
mind, everybody's already friends with who they're going to be friends with, and everybody already has their connections, and nobody's looking for new friends. And so I'm just this weirdo on the outside of everybody else's bubble, like floating around, waiting for somebody to see me and be like, "Oh, let's invite that girl in." So I try to always be when I am the girl on the inside and I see that person on the outside, I try to welcome people in. But my question is then, how do you get to that point? How can you start initiating friendships? What advice do you have for that, Kelly?
Well, I'll start by saying that I pulled a very silly goose move the other day because I essentially did just approach someone and say, "Hey, do you want to be friends?" Not in those exact terms, but yes, I did. It was very outside of my comfort zone.
Mhm.
Even though the last 2 years have been outside of my comfort zone
Yeah.
in making friends, I have made some really great friendships here in the last 2 years. But that was very out of character for me.
Mhm.
This girl, we have had a couple of interactions on social media and then face to face for the purpose of her buying something from me. I was selling some things in a Facebook group that my friend who was moving kind of started. She's like, "Yeah, you can list your stuff in here." This girl bought a couple things for me. Our interactions were, "Hey, I'll meet you at such and such at this time." And then in face, like, "Here's your stuff. Thanks for the money." That was that. She has 4 kids, but two of her kids are very close in age to my son.
Okay.
And he's been really struggling for the last 6 months because his best friend moved to the other side of the world. And a lot of the friends I've made here have kids who are much younger than him. He's homeschooled, not to say he's not socialized. He's in sports and church things and whatnot, but he's really missing that like close connection he
Right.
had with his friend that moved. And so I I know of this girl. I know she has kids close in his age. My friend really likes her. And so I was like, "Hey, maybe we would get along and maybe
Yeah.
our kids would get along." So I messaged her and was like, "Hey, this is very random, but I was wondering if you want to come over for coffee and let our kids play." She was
Oh,
like, "I would love to do that. They're coming over in a couple weeks." That was so unlike me to do that. But sometimes you just gotta put yourself out there. As far as like you were saying, it can be easy to meet people through sports and whatnot. My son plays basketball and he was in T-ball. Now he's starting coach pitch. He's done swimming lessons and soccer. You're always around other parents and it's like, "Hey, how you doing? See you Friday," whatever.
yeah.
And that's great. But to build those deeper, meaningful friendships, so not only do you chat when you're together, but you can call them and be like, "Hey, I need help,"
Yeah.
whatever. Um, or someone to talk to when you're having a hard day. I have built those friendships here too, and I'm very thankful for that. But it definitely takes putting yourself out there, but also a lot of effort. And
Mhm.
I tell my husband this all the time because he loves to say, like, "I don't have any friends." And I tell him, you have to be a friend
Yeah.
first. Like, friends don't fall into your lap. And chances are the people that you're talking to and that you're like, we chat, but we're not really friends, they might be feeling the same thing. So I think making those first steps, and for me, what I have found here, because like you said, when you moved to Missouri, it's kind of a hard community to break in
Mhm.
and feel a part of because everyone grew up there. That could not be more true of Maine. I have cousins here in the next town over,
Mhm.
and I'm telling you, they're on fourth or fifth generation in that town. It is
Oh,
very normal for Mainers to just grow up and stay in the town they were raised
Mm-hmm.
in and then raise their kids there. It's very generational here. Coming into that, it was very like, I am definitely an outsider, even
Mm-hmm.
though, like I knew all about Maine. I grew up coming here.
Yeah.
I have family here. I was still very much the outsider. One of the first things that I plugged into that helped me get to know people, it was a book club. It was great. I met a lot of people through that. I'm not in that book club anymore, but I built some really good relationships through that. If you're wanting to build solid, really meaningful friendships, you can't do it by just talking to those people
Yeah.
when you see them at these group events. So, what I started doing pretty soon after we moved, I just started inviting people over so that we could have one on one.
Yeah.
That is where I've built some really good friendships. It's a little uncomfortable at first. When we lived in Virginia, we never had people over, which is crazy because I grew up there. But it's different. People don't stay there. That area is very much like people come and they
Yeah.
go. Even a lot of the people I grew up with weren't around anymore. I had family there, so I just kind of fell on that and didn't crave community.
Mm.
I could probably count on one hand how many times I invited someone over to my house
That's
when
sad
we
because you had the
lived
cutest
there.
house. I mean, your one in Maine in
Yeah.
pictures looks nice too, but your Virginia house was adorable. I went to your house.
You did, but your family.
Oh, that's true. Right.
And so when we moved here, I was like, you know what? We're not doing this anymore. I have cousins, but they're very busy and their schedules are very different from ours. I was like, nope, we're not going to be loners here. And so we just started inviting people over and building relationships that way. It was actually funny because one of the first times we did it, the couple we had over were like, thanks for doing this. Like,
Oh.
I feel like not a lot of people do that here.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much you see them at things, and this is from someone who grew up here.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's just not super common for
Mm-hmm.
people to invite random people over. So we started making it a point to do that. We've had people that Jeff works with, we've had multiple people that we've met at church. It's kind of just been like, oh yeah, we've talked to this couple multiple times at church because they always sit on the row in front of us. So let's just ask them if they want to come over for dinner Friday night. Very out of character for both of us, but it's been so huge in us building a community here.
Well, and I love that. And so many of the things you said, I think one of the big things is you're right. It has to be intentional. You can't just go on autopilot and think friendships are going to work. And that's not just the creating them, that's the maintaining them too. It also, I feel like it's a little bit like dating. Like you're putting yourself out there. I joke by saying, hey, do you want to be my friend? But at the same time, it's kind of like that. Like, you asking
Mm-hmm.
that girl to come over for coffee. I think part of it is because I'm still dealing with insecurities deep within my brain that the fear of rejection is so deep within me that I'm like, well, what if they don't like me? Like, what if they don't want to be my friend? If I ask them to hang out and they're like, ew, no, which I realize nobody would probably say out loud, but in my head, I'd be like, oh, their eyes totally said. They were like, ew, no. I struggle with that. And it's weird because it's certain times or with certain people, there's certain people I feel very intimidated by, like, oh, she's really pretty. Oh, she's really skinny. Oh, she's really popular. And I realize I sound like I'm 15 right now with the fear
Nope.
they'll have. But it's like, well, she wouldn't want to
Yeah.
be my friend. People already have friends. They're not looking for new friends. But I think that you're right that there are other people who are looking for it and they're almost waiting for somebody else to do it. So you need to be the one to do it. And there's a really sweet lady. She's the mom of my son's friend. And she and I, we've seen each other, like birthday parties or school events. And I really like her. And it's one of those ones where like, oh, we should hang out. And she had texted me, it's been probably a little over a month and, kind of talking about things. And I was like, oh, we should do coffee sometime. And she's like, yeah, I'd really like that. And we still haven't. So, Jenny, if you're listening, we will get coffee. I do want to be your friend. Please let us do this. I think that it's important to kind of, and it may not work, but you don't know, just like dating. Go out for
Yeah.
coffee, do an activity, hang out, get to know them. Like you said, invite them over. I don't know if it's my personality or my age now, but I long more for those simpler things. I would love to just have a game night. I love board games. And I would love
Yeah.
to have people over because you're doing an activity. It's not weird if the conversation lulls and you can have multiple people over for it. And you're right, just inviting people over. But then the voices in my head are like, oh, but my house, it's not perfectly decorated. Our living room is very lived in. It's clean because my husband, thank God for him, is very big into cleaning and organization. And, we're opposites that way. So it's great he's in charge of that stuff. So our house is clean, but like our living room, it's got our son's artwork on the walls. We've got like Lego things on the bookshelves and memorabilia around and knickknacks because all of us, my husband, myself, my son, were into antiquing. So we have a bunch of just what some people might call crap, but we think are treasures. Do I want those people inside my house to see what I'm like? If I'm trying to put my best self out there so people will like me, do I want to invite them in here? And then they're going to be like, oh, this girl, she's a nutcase. Like, let's not be her friend. I know those are the insecurities talking, but like you said, when I was younger, I still had insecurities, but it wasn't about friendship stuff. It was like, whatever. This is me. You can like me or not. When it came to friends, I might have been delusional, just figured everybody liked me. Like, why wouldn't you want to be my friend? I'm a great person. But as I've gotten older, I still think people should like me and I'm a great person. But it's different because I see all the things that I think are wrong with me. And I worry that if I let people in, other people will see what's wrong with me and then they don't want to be my friend. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was something I had to push myself to get over after we moved and started being intentional about inviting people over. When we lived in our old house that you so kindly called super cute, I worked really hard at that. It was very important for me. I don't know why. For one thing, I just enjoy decorating, and
Yeah.
that's fine. And I've still done that here. I think part of it was because I was on social media a lot more back then than I am now.
Mm,
And so you know how that is. You
I do.
compare and you feel like your life and your house should look a certain way. I fell into that when we lived in our old house. And I wouldn't dare invite someone over if everything was not in its place. And I'm talking like no toys laying in the floor, despite the fact
Oh,
that I had a 3-year old, like everything
right.
needed to look perfect. When we came here and started inviting people, I almost fell into that again. We have hardly even talked. I need everything to look great so that they
Mm,
think that I have my life together and my house together.
right.
And that just couldn't be further from the truth. And one really great thing about Mainers is that most of the time they're not trying to impress anyone. And I just really love that. And I have started to settle into that myself. Coming here and starting to make friends and going to different houses made me realize, oh, their house looks like a normal house too. They have dishes in the sink, and I'm not judging them for that. So
Mm,
it's probably okay if there's a cup in my sink when someone
yeah.
comes over, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Um, there was a time where if someone was coming over, I would take all of Ethan's artwork off the fridge and wipe all the fingerprints off.
Oh.
And now I'm like, no, why would I
Mhm.
do that? So many people come into my house and look at like his artwork and stuff, and they're commenting on it and having conversation with him about it. And
Yeah.
like, I think we just have to, and it's not easy, and it's not comfortable until you start to do it more, but we have to get over that concern that people are
Mhm.
going to judge us or think less of us. The reality is they're just going to see that we're a normal person like they probably are too.
And I
And
think it comes from like we have to accept ourselves so that we can allow other people to accept us the way we are. The people that I do consider friends, I have no problem with just having them over. Like, yeah, come over whenever. And I don't even care if there's dust certain places or whatever. I had somebody over and she asked if she could use the bathroom. I'm like, yeah, but it's a boys' bathroom, so I can't promise it's going to be super clean. I try to clean my son's bathroom because that is the guest guest bathroom when people come over. So I try to keep it clean.
Yeah.
He's a 12-year-old boy. I can't guarantee what's going on in
Mm-hmm.
that bathroom. But again, those are people I've already established friendships with. So I don't care. You've seen me at my low. This is my house. This is
Mm-hmm.
me. I was thinking more like when you said, I want to be your friend and come over to my house. That's where I'm like, how about let's meet at the coffee shop and let me see if I want to invite you to my house. I think that's important. If we can talk about the social media thing for a minute, because I know that you have let go of it more, and I love that. I have not let go as much, but I feel like my social media posting has become more intentional because my social media viewing, perusing, scrolling, whatever word you want to use, is not healthy. I get into that comparison game and it's not healthy for me. I get more depressed about myself, my life, whatever. Honestly, I have a great life. I shouldn't be depressed about any of it. But I'm like, oh, so and so's doing this, or so and so's going there, or so and so has this. And I feel like, it can affect some of my friendships too, because people who may not be super close friends, if all I know from them is on social media, it does paint a picture. And there are some people, and I think we've all done it, right? You see somebody posting and you're like, oh, they're posting again. And they're posting it for attention while I am trying to be more authentically me. I almost get more irritated when I see people not being authentically them. And I realize that sounds terrible and I sound like such a judgmental biatch or whatever. But I feel like, okay, we can all admit Facebook is fake. Like, yeah, it's your highlight reel, it's the best things, whatever. But at the same time, I do think there are some people that post just to make it look even better than it really is. And when I know that it's
Mm-hmm.
not, that bothers me more. When I post, I even stop and think about, why am I posting this? Am I posting it for me? Am I posting it to get likes or views or clicks? Or am I trying to show off to someone? I don't even post that much about my son anymore. I'm proud of stuff he does, but most of the people that are on my Facebook aren't going to care. Funny memes or something that I think is like, the other day I shared something and it was like, don't invite me to anything that has a chaotic parking situation, which is legit. I
Yes,
do not
you did.
not want to
Same.
parallel park. If it's a stressful
Nope.
situation, I don't want to, if I have to pay for parking and I don't know how to pay for it, parking is huge for me. And that's something I share because one,
Yeah.
I think it's funny. Two, it is authentically me. And I think other
Yep.
people can relate to it. So I feel like my Facebook has become more of just that, like sharing funny things. Or sometimes I'll share like some of the big things, when we went to the mother son dance, like I share that because I do want to show my memories again. Or if we're there with other friends and I want to share pictures so they can see the pictures they're into. Like, I'm just more intentional
Mm-hmm.
about what I share. Social media can help, but I also think it can negatively affect some in-person friendships too. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree.
That's your thought. You're like, yep, Kristen, you said it. Good job. I'm like, social media is the devil to friendship. You're like, yep, you said it.
I met my best friend through social media, and it can be a great thing. But at the end of the day, I think the whole purpose of social media has changed. Initially, it was intended to be a way to connect with your friends or distant family,
Mm,
and that was cool. But it's not that anymore for most people. Granted, yes, some people still pretty much just utilize it to share pictures of their kids to friends and family who are far away. And that's fine. I don't think it's bad to use it, and I'm still on it. But I think the whole intention behind social media has just gone so far from how it started. And now it's just so much politics and people arguing with complete
mm-hmm.
strangers, which
Yes,
will never not baffle me. I do not understand
I know.
keyboard warriors, like whatever. But that's a whole different
It
topic.
is.
But yeah, it is so easy to fall into the comparison game
Mm-hmm.
or, like you said, I've kind of had some of this where I utilized Facebook to connect to people that I've maybe met at church or wherever we've met, sports, things like that. And I've used it to be like, oh, like, let me, like, because obviously I don't just like walk up to people and be like, hey, what's your number?
Right.
So it's a little more socially acceptable if a
Yes.
friend requests
Yep.
them
And then
to
Facebook
connect. And
Messenger.
yes, I've carried that into Messenger and built things from there.
Mhm.
Ask them to come over on Facebook Messenger. I think it can be a great tool, but even with that, sometimes it's like, I wanted to connect with her, so let me add her on Facebook. You add them, and then you start scrolling their page. And that can give you preconceived notions about this
Yes.
person and who they are or what they like or what their personality is like, when really it's so far from the truth. And I think also it can be easy, especially with our friends who are nearby, it can be easy, especially if there's someone who does post a lot. I think it can be easy to feel like you're in the know and that
Yep.
you're keeping up and that you don't need to check in because you see their Facebook posts every single day. But chances are they're not posting on Facebook about what's really going on in their life. And so we
Yes.
can't let ourselves fall into that lie of like, I know what's going on because I read their posts every day.
Yep.
It's just not true. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind and be super intentional, even with those friends who are very present on social media, checking in just like you would on a friend who
Mhm.
never posts on social media.
No, and I fully agree with that. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about is how it almost gives a false sense of friendship. Because, like you said, you're like, oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I like her posts all the time. I comment on all of her pictures. Like, yeah, we're good. When really, maybe she's posting all those things because she's hiding what's really going on. Facebook is your highlight reel and all the things you're proud of. Sometimes people will use it as a way to hide what's really going on.
They're not airing the real nitty gritty of life that
Right.
they maybe really need to be checked in on about,
Yes.
like just for an example, last week was a really hard week here in my house for
Hmm.
me. Like everyone's fine, but it was just me. I
Yeah.
cried and I was really going through it emotionally. Even when I was very present on social media, I wasn't posting things like that, you know?
Right.
Sure, you might do the classic little picture of your coffee cup and you're like, oh, mamas, it's been a tough week over here. I feel ya. Like, but you're not
Right.
really, you know what I mean? I keep it real on social media, but you're not really
Hmm.
sharing what's going on. And so yeah, I think it's just really important to keep that in mind and still be intentional about reaching out and connecting in real life.
Hmm. I agree. You can't just replace face to face or even text to text, which I know is still impersonal, but you can't replace that with social media. But I would love to see a world someday where people are more authentically themselves in real life and on the internet. I'm not saying post the worst of the worst, but like you said, I wish people would feel comfortable being like, hey, had a bad day, cried at work today. And again, I know you wouldn't really post that out there. Which, P.S., I'm almost 2 months of not crying at work, so we're winning there. February 5th was the last day I cried at work. Not like I'm keeping track. I'm totally keeping track. Because for a while, there were a lot of tears in my office, so every day is a win.
Oh,
I wish that it could be, I don't know if you're too young to remember this, but back in the day, we used this thing called AOL Instant Messenger, also known as
oh, for
AIM.
sure.
Do you
Yeah.
remember using cryptic lyrics to leave a message? I remember one time in college, and I specifically remember I made the message. It was lyrics from, I think, I'm going to have to look it up, but it was the Bad Day Again song. You had a bad day, da, 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 da,
Yes.
whatever, right? So also remind me never to sing on the podcast again. But I had put lyrics from that because I was just having a bad day. Like, I don't know what it was, but it resonated with me. Why can't we get back to that? Even if it's a little cryptic, why can't we get back to AOL Instant Messenger days where you used phrases to talk about what your actual emotional state was so people knew what was going on with you? Let's normalize
Yeah.
that again.
Well, and even in the early days of Facebook, it was totally acceptable to post song lyrics as your
Yeah.
status. And it was very cryptic most of the time, but like everyone did it and that was fine. And it's so funny because I still occasionally find myself wanting to post song lyrics on my Facebook
Same.
status.
Same. Let's
And
do
I'm
it.
like, this would just be so weird
And then I'll go and
because
like it.
nobody does that anymore.
I think we should do it. Let's start
Oh,
doing it. There's a lot of trends I've brought back that I take credit for. I have brought scrunchies
yes.
back. I have brought butterfly hair clips back. I am still working baby
Yep.
barrettes and zigzag parts, which I know are going to catch on eventually. I just have to keep marketing it. So I also think I can bring back lyrics as status updates on Facebook.
Last week, I was told that zigzag parts are coming back. This came to me from someone who's pretty on top of trends and very active on TikTok. And I said, my sister in law started that.
I love that.
I said, she's been trying to start that for a while. And she said, it's becoming a thing again. So
Yep.
there you go.
Manifest it. Making friendships, being friends, it's hard. I do think that we've made some really good progress in talking about it's about being intentional. It's about finding someone and putting yourself out there and accepting people for who they are, also accepting you for who you are and knowing that the right people will be there. And I think that's what it is. I think part of it too, we've talked about being intentional and putting the work in and making the time and doing the things. Sometimes it's okay if a friendship doesn't work out. Have you had any examples
Yeah.
of that where you have tried to make a friend and whether it was you or her or whatever, it's kind of like, yes, this isn't our thing. Have you experienced that?
I was just going to say on the topic of it's okay if things don't work out and things don't turn into a friendship. This example popped into my head. There is someone who I invited over. I think the first time I was like, let's grab dinner or something. And then it was kind of like a yeah. And then never heard from her. And then ran into her and texted her after the fact, just like, hey, good to see you. Still would love to get together. Do you want to come over for coffee? And suggested a day. And it was like, yeah. And then no response.
Oh,
I don't know if it's like completely unintentional. Like,
mm-hmm.
I've learned some people just really are bad at like responding to
Yeah.
text, and that's okay. I don't know if it's that or if it's me trying to make a friend with someone who's
Mm-hmm.
not on the same page as me. I don't
Right.
know, but I'm okay with that. There was a time where I would have taken that so personally and been like, she probably thinks I'm an idiot because I've asked her twice now. I've just been really hard on myself, or felt like nobody wants to be my friend,
Yes.
how we can get all in our feelings and extra dramatic. And I feel like there was a time where that would have been my response, but I just think I'm in a place now where I have very intentionally built some really solid friendships that I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
sure, I'm always up for making new friends. I've got this girl coming over in 2 weeks, and maybe that'll be the start of a new friendship. Maybe our kids are just going to like each other and we won't actually vibe. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We don't have to be friends with everyone. It's
Yep.
totally fine to have acquaintances, and we're not going to build a deep friendship with every single person we
Mm-hmm.
encounter, every single person that we even maybe go out for coffee with
Right.
occasionally. And that's okay. When you're being intentional and seeking people out and putting in the effort to the friendships that you know just click and that really mean something, it it's gonna it's going to make those other situations just
Mm-hmm.
easier because you're like, it's okay. No hard feelings. I have my people.
And I think you're right. And being intentional too. And it's being able to know when to keep pushing and when to stop. Because, like you said, the girl who hasn't really gotten back to you yet, but she could be going through something hard. Like maybe her,
Yeah.
and I'm completely making this up just for, example purposes.
Hmm.
Like maybe her husband just got laid off. Maybe her mother got diagnosed with cancer. Like maybe she actually has some stuff going on in her life and she hasn't been able to get back to you, but now she needs somebody more than ever and you should keep trying and because just the timing was wrong. I'm not saying that's what it is, But it could also be that she doesn't want to do it, but she's not forward enough to be able to just say no thank you, and is leading you on in a way. And it's hard to know those things. And that's the other thing. While we're coming up with all these things we need to normalize, we also need people to be able to know that no is a complete sentence. For the longest time, if I didn't want to do something or whatever, I'd try to go with the excuse, oh no, I'm sorry, I have to wash my hair that night. It wasn't that bad, but finding a reason to not do something because I just couldn't say no. Whereas
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point now in my life where it's more of a, oh, thank you so much for thinking of me. I'm not going to be able to go. I really appreciate the invitation, but I'm going to decline at this time. I don't owe anybody an excuse or a reason or a justification. I don't
Yeah.
expect that from anybody either. I have some friends who are still working on boundaries and struggling with saying no. So if I ask someone to do something, I've come right out and said, hey, look, I'm asking you because you're my friend and I want to include you, but I am okay if you say no. You don't have to give me a reason. This happened recently with a friend of mine. She came back and she's like, no, I don't think I can because of, whatever. And I was like, see, you said no. Like, doesn't that feel good? And she was like, no, I'd really like to go eat. I was like, oh my gosh. But it comes with practice and it comes with time. But we don't have to do everything with everybody. And we don't have to try to force friendships with every person. And it's okay to say
Yeah.
no. And I think that's important too, is knowing when to say it and how to say it. But you don't have to give excuse. You can just say, no, thank you.
Yeah. And I feel like in today's society, people are so easily offended and
Yes.
people take everything so personally. And
Yes.
so, speaking for myself and everyone else out there who's listening, you can't take everything as a personal attack
Mm,
because a lot of the times when people decline or whatever, it's not even about you.
right. Exactly. So I don't know, but we'll get there. I think be intentional, be a good friend, make friends where you can, but don't feel like you have to force it with every person you meet. And social media isn't real and lets you song lyrics and have zigzag parts.
Yes.
That's the moral of this episode. If you get nothing else, start parting your hair in a zigzag. There's YouTube tutorials you can find because I know it's hard sometimes, but we're going to bring it back.
Yeah. Go post a song on your status, please.
Yeah. So next time you're on Facebook, you see if I've got song lyrics there because we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly, this has been wonderful. Any final closing thoughts, advice, stories you want to share before we wrap it up?
If you're in a season where you're wanting to build deeper face to face friendships and build community with the people around you, put aside your concerns of what someone might think of you and know that they're probably normal. I think we put such high expectations on people and think that there's something that they're not. We expect ourselves to portray that as well. Don't be afraid to dive in. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but speaking as someone who's been practicing this for almost 2 years, just start doing it. Start asking people to grab a coffee with you or invite them over to your house, even if it's a little messy. And again, they may come over one time and you guys may never plan to hang out again, and that's okay. Or they might come over and it could be the start of a really awesome friendship.
Yes, I love that. And I think I would add, be comfortable in accepting yourself and who you are so that you can allow other people to accept you the way you are also. Don't read into things too much. Don't take yourself too seriously.
Mm,
Don't take things too
yeah.
personal. And just be open to whatever happens and do a zigzag
Yeah.
part. So, all right, Kelly. Well, as always, this has been wonderful. And I can't wait till we talk again. So we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for spending time with me on Talk with Kristen with an E, where it's always cheaper than therapy. If you enjoyed today's chat, don't forget to subscribe. And hey, let's keep these conversations going. You can find me on Instagram at Talk with Kristen with an E. Let me know what's on your mind. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, life is always better when we talk it out.